So this week in elections news, we on the left cheered on as incumbent Senator Ed Markey defeated the latest Kennedy scion to be forced upon us, Joe Kennedy III, in the Massachusetts Democratic primary.
Antoinette, historic because we expect turnout to set a new record for a state primary and because a Kennedy has never lost a Massachusetts election. While the results are still coming in, it does appear to be a clear win for Markey in this race. Kennedy called his opponent to concede around 10 o'clock last night and told his supporters the larger battle is far from over.
Yeah, this result was a bit of a surprise because when the race started back in 2019, Joe Kennedy jumped out to a commanding lead, and that lead held to as late as March of this year.
Our exclusive Suffolk WBZ Globe poll finds Kennedy in the lead by 6 points, just outside the survey's 4.4% margin of error.
And given that A. Kennedy had never lost an election in Massachusetts, it was considered a given that RFK's grandson would coast to an easy victory against a Senator Markey who wasn't exactly a household name in the way other Massachusetts senators like Elizabeth Warren or John Kerry were.
No, there's no more waiting turns. And in our state, we have seen over many cycles now, challengers taking out incumbents. And especially with Trump in the White House, there's no more important time for people to
I think it's
up.
a bold move, but something we should have expected. It's a good move for Kennedy. I think he's the favorite, no question.
But Markey did it. He won. How? How did this crusty old senator that no one had heard of 15 minutes ago defeat the latest iteration of the Kennedy dynasty? Well, he did it because despite the fact that Markey is 74 and Kennedy is 39, Markey was able to activate young voters and activists across Massachusetts. And he did this basically by moving to the left. And that, in and of itself, is pretty remarkable. Because throughout my entire lifetime, 99% of the time, a Democrat is facing an election with someone to their right, be it a primary or a general, they tend to move to the right in response. I mean, I'll never forget John Kerry telling George W. Bush in 2004 that actually the real problem was that he wasn't sending enough troops to Iraq.
Where the 9/11 Commission confirms there was no connection to 9/11 itself in Saddam Hussein, and where the reason for going to war was weapons of mass destruction, not the removal of Saddam Hussein. This president has made, I regret to say, a colossal error of judgment. And judgment is what we look for in the President of the United States of America.
I was hoping diplomacy would work. I understand the serious consequences of committing our troops into harm's way. It's the hardest decision a president makes. So I went to the United Nations. I didn't need anybody to tell me to go to the United Nations. I decided to go there myself. And I went there hoping that once and for all, the free world would act in concert to get Saddam Hussein to listen to our demands. They passed a resolution that said disclose, disarm, or face serious consequences. I believe when an international body speaks, it must mean what it says. But Saddam Hussein had no intention of disarming.
This president I don't know if he sees what's really happening on there. But it's getting worse by the day. More soldiers killed in June than before, more in July than June, more in August than July, more in September than in August. And now we see beheadings, and we got weapons of mass destruction crossing the border every single day, and they're blowing people up. And we don't have enough troops there.
We don't have enough troops there. Never forget it. Anyway, it's not like Markey was some progressive lion. I mean, he himself voted for the Iraq War when he was a member of Congress, and his record is spotty on a lot of issues. But when Markey got into Congress in 1976 as a 29-year-old, he came in with a lot of the so-called Watergate babies, who were kind of a proto-version of today's woke centrists, in that they were disgusted by the Vietnam War and were all pro-civil rights, but they rejected the populist economics of the New Deal generation that had dominated American politics and the Democratic Party for 40 years. Markey wasn't really like those guys. Despite his youth, he had kind of like an old school labor streak to his politics. And he also, it has to be said, had some pretty socially conservative views on things like school busing. But as neoliberalism became hegemonic in the Democratic Party, Markey mostly played along, although he frequently positioned himself on the progressive side of the party. Not like Bernie, but to the left of like the medium Democrat. And as he was fighting for his political life in the face of a challenge from the right, in the face of this young Joe Kennedy, Markey decided to embrace the old school populism of his youth with special emphasis on the Green New Deal, which he co-authored with AOC.
I want to thank my fantastic partner on this Green New Deal resolution, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I want to thank all of the House and Senate members who are gathered here with many others who have signed on or will be signing on to this resolution.
And his decision to move left and embrace the support of the younger, more radical voters needed to be rewarded, which of course flies in the face of the liberal caricature of the left, which is constantly saying that politicians like Bernie Sanders are too dogmatic about purity tests.
You know, this idea of purity and you're never compromised and you're always politically woke and all that stuff, you should get over that quickly.
I'm telling you, this is going to be the death of liberals, this nitpicky, intramural attacking of friends for insufficient purity, compulsively cleaning up a little corner of the room that's already quite clean.
Ah, yes. The old cliche, the dreaded left-wing circular firing squad, a tale as old as time. And while I do think that there is an element of the left that is all too willing to condemn, moralize, and even cancel someone for not ascribing totally to a laundry list of inscrutable issues, that is certainly not true when it comes to politicians. What we need to recognize in politicians is who they are courting for power and condemn them when they court donors or, say, rich suburbanites. More on that in the interview with Matt Karp in a few minutes. And we reward them when they court social movements and activists such as the Sunrise Movement and, generally speaking, the left. If they feel like they owe us for their power, they will govern for us. It doesn't matter what is in their hearts. What matters is the question, to whom do they owe power? And Markey bucked the donor class and indeed the leadership of his own party. And as he began to gain on Kennedy in the polls and then eventually overtake him, Kennedy tried to beat him back using woke centrist attacks such as
Congressman Joe Kennedy on the campaign trail in Roxbury accusing the Markey camp of encouraging online threats. Kennedy's campaign manager firing off an email to the Markey camp writing, "The tone and tenor of the Markey for Senate campaign and people associated with it have reached dangerous levels."
Yeah, they really tried the dreaded toxic online Bernie bro attack. They're tweeting snake emojis. The horror. But they didn't stop there. When the Boston Globe endorsed Markey, the Kennedy campaign essentially claimed it was due to racism. In a statement, Kennedy's campaign manager said, quote, "If you are one of the Globe's disproportionately white, well-off, educated readers, the past few decades have been pretty good for you. The status quo has delivered. Ed Markey has done just fine." And too often, Democratic politicians are terrified of actual conflict. I mean, whenever there's any disagreement in a debate, they're like, guys, we're not united. This helps the Republicans. But Markey didn't blink in the face of cynical centrism. In fact, he went on the attack in the debates. He was merciless with Kennedy, and he even attacked the most hallowed totem of the Democratic Party by attacking the Kennedy name.
We asked what we could do for our country. We went out. We did it. With all due respect, it's time to start asking what your country can do for you.
Yeah, this little dig at John F. Kennedy's most famous line led Nancy Pelosi to endorse Joe Kennedy, which hilariously led to a huge fundraising haul for Ed Markey. So yeah, Pelosi's toxic brand aside, Markey was rewarded for moving left, and that was a source of great frustration for the apparatchiks in the Democratic Party. A gossipy postmortem in Politico had a bunch of money quotes like, quote, "The Markey campaign did a masterful job of convincing voters that Ed is someone he is not," one Democratic strategist with Massachusetts ties said after the primary results were tallied. And, quote, this goes to show you that the left doesn't do their homework and they're easily won over by bright, shiny objects," said one Kennedy ally. Given Kennedy's issues with moist mouth, I would not use the term bright, shiny objects. And no, Kennedy ally, we know exactly who Ed Markey has been, but we can recognize a political trajectory and we can see beyond brands and the sheen of youth.
Really excited about the numbers and how they're coming in. need you guys to get out there and vote today. If you are watching this and you are not a voter in Massachusetts, it doesn't mean you can't help. Just call some of your friends that are. Send some emails, some text messages. You can log on to our page too and figure out how to volunteer. The more people that vote today, the better we got, and the better we're going to do, and the more likely we're going
to. Yeah, how did that guy lose? I mean, how did that guy lose? I mean, he obviously sucks. And now Markey won, and he owes us for saving his political life. And he does not owe the Democratic Party establishment anything, which means we gained an ally. We will remain vigilant, but it's an encouraging political development nonetheless. Ariella, did you canvass for Joe Kennedy?
I did. I got my thickest Boston accent and I said, you gotta vote for Joe. What I think is funny about this, and I'm waiting for this from like the mainstream media, is like, Kennedy curse? Is that why Ed won? Because they're never going to admit that, you know, this older white man was able to mobilize young voters across racial groups through like a strong left-leaning platform. And I noticed even on Facebook, some of my friends who live there were so excited, like really up to the end, didn't think that he would win and really wanted him to, because he was actually vocalizing the issues they care about. And they were really, really shocked, and also like, I think more politically driven after that win. And so it'll be interesting to see what comes out of that. He mobilized so many voters than had previously voted. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's similar to what Bernie Sanders was able to do, right? I mean, Bernie Sanders is like 900 years old, and but the most robust support comes from young, you know, multiracial people, and like political consultants and people in the mainstream media like can't comprehend the idea of someone not being attracted to vote for someone that just kind of looks like them, you know, like, why don't young black people vote for Kamala Harris? You know what I mean? In the Democratic Party, why are they going for the older white guy? But they just can't comprehend that a lot of this just has to do with unabashed support for big universal programs that would improve their lives. Like, it's not rocket science.
Exactly. And you grow a coalition by talking about the things that everyone is experiencing. If you're saying, you know, if you listen to the rallying cry of Occupy Wall Street, we are the 99%, and you have a platform that answers the needs of those people who are shut out of the labor market, who can't imagine their life improving, who can't afford basic needs, you're going to get those people on your side. It's interesting that, you know, Kennedy comes from a family that was known for its kind of good looks and charm and this kind of political dynasty. And I think a lot of people were thinking, you know, this brand's going to carry him through. His good looks and charm contrast to Markey's, who, you know, is an older, saggier man who's got that kind of gruff, like Massachusetts vibe going on, which I find endearing, having grown up in Maine. They're sort of the same. Right. But people don't vote that way anymore. You know, it's too dire. Their needs feel too extreme to settle for that kind of like centrist charm, like offensive. Mm-hmm. So I think it'll be interesting, and it'll be interesting to see the death of that, like, well, he's just an old white man kind of deal. Because, you know, he's an old white man who's very close to like a young brown woman who he co-wrote the Green New Deal bill with. Right. We, especially younger people, are really seeing through that crass identitarian shift in the Democratic Party.
Absolutely.